The late afternoon sun filtered through the towering pine trees of Whitewater State Park as Mark Thompson carefully drove his family's blue Ford Explorer along the winding gravel road that led to campsite number 17. It was Friday, August 12, 2016, and the beginning of what promised to be a perfect weekend camping trip for the Thompson family. Mark, 32, was an accountant who worked long hours during tax season and had been looking forward to this outdoor getaway for months. His wife, Rachel, 29, taught elementary school and shared his enthusiasm for introducing their young daughter to the beauty of nature and the simple pleasures of camping. 3-year-old Emma Thompson sat strapped into her car seat in the back of the Explorer, chattering excitedly about the adventure ahead, while clutching her favorite stuffed animal, a well-worn teddy bear named Mr. Buttons that had been her constant companion since infancy. Emma had been talking about camping for weeks after her parents announced their plans, asking endless questions about sleeping in a tent, cooking over a campfire, and seeing wild animals in the forest. Her enthusiasm was infectious, and both Mark and Rachel felt renewed excitement about their outdoor plans as they listened to their daughter's animated commentary during the drive to the campground. Whitewater State Park was located in northwestern Minnesota, approximately 2 hours from the Thompson family's home in the Minneapolis suburb of Bloomington. The park encompassed over 3,000 acres of pristine wilderness, featuring dense forests, crystal-clear streams, and well-maintained hiking trails that attracted outdoor enthusiasts from throughout the Midwest. Mark had chosen this particular destination because it offered family-friendly camping facilities while still providing the sense of wilderness adventure that he and Rachel craved. The Thompson family had been camping together several times since Emma's birth, though most of their previous trips had been to more developed campgrounds with amenities like restrooms, showers, and electrical hookups. This weekend represented their first experience with what park rangers called primitive camping, a more rustic arrangement that involved hiking to a designated site with no vehicle access and minimal facilities. Mark and Rachel had decided that Emma was finally old enough to handle the more challenging logistics of primitive camping, and they were excited about the enhanced connection with nature that this type of experience would provide. Campsite 17 was located approximately 1 mile from the main parking area via a well-marked hiking trail that wound through dense forest and crossed 2 small streams on wooden footbridges. The site itself was situated in a small clearing surrounded by mature pine and oak trees, with a designated fire ring and a basic wooden picnic table that had been weathered gray by years of exposure to the elements. A small creek ran approximately 50 yards from the camping area, providing a source of fresh water and a pleasant backdrop of gurgling sounds that would accompany their outdoor experience. The family reached the parking area at 4:30 p.m. and began the process of organizing their camping gear for the hike to their designated site. Mark had packed carefully, balancing the need for essential equipment with the reality that everything would need to be carried on their backs for the mile-long trek through the forest. Their gear included a 4-person family tent, sleeping bags rated for the cool August nights typical of northern Minnesota, a portable camping stove for cooking meals, and enough food and water for 2 full days in the wilderness. Rachel helped Emma into her small backpack, which contained the 3-year-old's personal items, including changes of clothes, her favorite books, and of course Mr. Buttons, who would serve as both comfort object and camping companion. Emma was proud of carrying her own pack and insisted on walking the entire trail herself rather than being carried by her parents, though Mark and Rachel were prepared to assist her if she became tired during the hike to their campsite. The hike to Campsite 17 took approximately 45 minutes, with frequent stops to allow Emma to examine interesting rocks, collect pine cones, and observe the squirrels and chipmunks that scurried through the forest around them. Rachel used these moments as teaching opportunities, pointing out different types of trees, explaining how animals prepare for winter, and helping Emma understand the importance of leaving natural areas undisturbed for future visitors to enjoy. Mark was impressed by his daughter's stamina and enthusiasm during the hike. Emma maintained her cheerful chatter throughout the journey, asking questions about everything she observed and expressing excitement about the camping experience that lay ahead. Her energy seemed boundless, and Mark found himself thinking that this weekend would mark the beginning of many family camping adventures, as Emma grew older and more capable of handling wilderness challenges. The family reached their assigned campsite at 5:15 p.m., with plenty of daylight remaining to set up their tent and organize their camping area before darkness fell. Mark and Rachel had developed an efficient system for establishing their camp based on their previous camping experiences, and they worked together to create a comfortable and safe outdoor home for the weekend. Mark began by clearing the tent area of any rocks, sticks, or debris that might create uncomfortable sleeping conditions or damage their equipment. Meanwhile, Rachel organized their food supplies and began planning the evening meal, which would consist of hot dogs cooked over the campfire, followed by s'mores that Emma had been anticipating for weeks. Emma helped by gathering small sticks and pine cones that could be used as kindling for their campfire, a task that kept her engaged while allowing her parents to focus on the more complex aspects of setting up camp. The tent setup went smoothly, with Mark and Rachel working together to stake down the corners and ensure that their shelter was properly secured against potential weather changes during the night. The weather forecast had called for clear skies and mild temperatures, but experienced campers always prepared for unexpected conditions that could arise in wilderness areas far from the convenience of indoor shelter. As evening approached, Mark built a campfire in the designated fire ring while Rachel prepared their dinner, and Emma continued her exploration of the immediate camping area. The 3-year-old remained within sight of her parents at all times, following the safety rules that Mark and Rachel had established for their wilderness adventure. Emma was particularly fascinated by the small creek that ran near their campsite, though she understood that she was not allowed to approach the water without adult supervision. Dinner was a festive affair, with the family sitting around the picnic table as daylight gradually faded, and the campfire provided both warmth and the romantic ambiance that made camping such a special experience. Emma delighted in eating hot dogs that had been cooked over the open fire, declaring them, quote, "the best hot dogs in the whole world," and asking if they could cook all their meals this way when they returned home to Bloomington. The s'mores preparation became a family activity that created lasting memories for everyone involved. Mark helped Emma roast marshmallows on a long stick, carefully supervising the process to ensure her safety around the fire, while allowing her to experience the satisfaction of participating in the cooking process. Rachel assembled the graham cracker and chocolate combinations, and Emma's face lit up with joy as she tasted her first campfire s'more, chocolate smearing across her cheeks as she savored the sweet treat. As darkness settled over the forest, the Thompson family cleaned up from their dinner and prepared for their first night of primitive camping together. Emma was initially excited about the prospect of sleeping in the tent, but as the unfamiliar sounds of the wilderness became more prominent in the darkness, she began to show signs of the nervousness that many young children experience during their first camping experiences. Mark and Rachel had anticipated this possibility and had prepared strategies for helping Emma feel secure in the unfamiliar environment. They read her favorite bedtime stories by the light of their camping lantern, maintained the campfire at a comfortable level that provided both warmth and reassurance, and ensured that Mr. Buttons was positioned prominently within Emma's sleeping area, where she could easily reach for comfort during the night. The family settled into their tent at approximately 9 p.m., with Emma positioned between her parents in the center of their sleeping arrangement. Mark and Rachel had chosen sleeping bags that could be partially unzipped and connected to create a larger family sleeping area that would help Emma feel secure and allow quick parental response if she needed comfort during the night. Emma fell asleep relatively quickly, her exhaustion from the day's hiking and outdoor activities overcoming her initial nervousness about sleeping in the tent. Mark and Rachel remained awake for another hour, talking quietly about their daughter's wonderful adaptation to the camping experience and making plans for hiking activities they could enjoy the following day. They discussed their amazement at Emma's resilience and enthusiasm, and both parents felt that this weekend was confirming their belief that outdoor experiences would be an important part of their daughter's upbringing. The forest around Campsite 17 settled into the peaceful quiet of a wilderness night, broken only by the gentle sounds of the nearby creek, the occasional call of an owl, and the soft crackling of the dying campfire. Mark had banked the fire carefully before retiring to the tent, ensuring that it would burn safely through the night while providing some light and warmth for their camping area. Saturday morning, August 13th, dawned clear and cool, with early sunlight filtering through the pine trees and casting dappled shadows across the camping area. The temperature had dropped to approximately 50 degrees during the night, making the sleeping bags a welcome source of warmth for the Thompson family, as they gradually awakened to the sounds of birds and squirrels beginning their daily activities in the forest around them. However, the peaceful morning at Campsite 17 was disrupted at approximately 7:30 a.m. when other campers hiking through the area made a discovery that would transform this family camping trip into one of Minnesota's most baffling missing person cases. The hikers, Robert and Linda Martinez from Duluth, were following the main trail system when they noticed the Thompson family's campsite and decided to offer a friendly greeting to fellow camping enthusiasts. What the Martinez couple found at Campsite 17 defied explanation and would haunt investigators for years to come. The Thompson family's tent remained exactly as it had been set up the previous evening, with sleeping bags and personal belongings arranged inside, as if the family had simply vanished during the night. The campfire had burned down to cold ashes, and there was no sign of any struggle, disturbance, or indication of what had happened to Mark, Rachel, and Emma Thompson. Robert Martinez called out several times, thinking that the family might be at the nearby creek or had gone for an early morning hike. When his calls received no response, he and Linda began to examine the campsite more carefully, growing increasingly concerned about what they were observing. The family's backpacks, food supplies, and camping equipment were all present and undisturbed. Emma's small backpack was still in the tent, with Mr. Button sitting exactly where a 3-year-old would have placed her beloved teddy bear before going to sleep. Most troubling of all was the complete absence of any tracks or signs, indicating where the Thompson family might have gone. The soft earth around the campsite should have clearly shown footprints if the family had left on foot, but Robert Martinez, who was an experienced outdoorsman, could find no trace of their departure. It was as if Mark, Rachel, and Emma had simply disappeared into thin air, leaving behind all of their possessions and no clues about their fate. Linda Martinez used her cell phone to contact park rangers, though cell service in the remote area was sporadic, and it took several attempts before she was able to establish a connection. When she finally reached the ranger station, her report of a family that appeared to have vanished from their campsite during the night prompted an immediate emergency response from park personnel and local law enforcement. Ranger Captain Susan Walsh arrived at Campsite 17 within 45 minutes of receiving the initial report, accompanied by 2 additional rangers and a search dog team that had been training in the park that morning. Walsh was a 20-year veteran of the Minnesota State Park System who had responded to numerous search and rescue operations, but she had never encountered a situation quite like what she found at the Thompson family's abandoned campsite. Captain Walsh's initial assessment confirmed the Martinez couple's observations. The campsite appeared to have been abandoned suddenly and completely, with no indication of where the family had gone, or why they would have left all of their possessions behind. The tent was properly staked, and showed no signs of forced entry or struggle. The sleeping bags were arranged as if the family had simply gotten up and walked away, leaving behind everything they would need for survival in the wilderness. The search dog team immediately began working the area around Campsite 17, attempting to track the family's scent and determine the direction of their departure. The dogs were able to pick up strong scent trails around the immediate camping area, confirming that the Thompson family had indeed been present at the site. However, the trails seemed to end abruptly at the edge of the campsite clearing, with no indication of the family having walked in any particular direction into the surrounding forest. Captain Walsh contacted the Minnesota State Police and the County Sheriff's Department to request additional search and rescue resources. The disappearance of an entire family, including a 3-year-old child, from a secured campsite in a state park was unprecedented and required the full resources of multiple agencies to investigate properly. Detective Maria Santos of the Minnesota State Police arrived at Whitewater State Park at noon on Saturday, August 13th, to take charge of what was now being treated as a potential crime scene. Santos was a specialist in missing persons cases who had worked dozens of investigations involving people who had vanished in wilderness areas throughout Minnesota and neighboring states. Detective Santos' first step was to secure the campsite and preserve any potential evidence that might provide clues about the Thompson family's disappearance. She established a perimeter around the area and brought in forensic specialists to document and analyze every aspect of the scene. Photographs were taken from multiple angles, fingerprints were collected from surfaces that the family had touched, and soil samples were gathered for analysis. The forensic examination of the campsite revealed several puzzling details that deepened the mystery of the Thompson family's disappearance. The family's cell phones were found in the tent, along with Mark's wallet and Rachel's purse, ruling out the possibility that they had left voluntarily with plans to return. More troubling was the discovery that Emma's shoes were still in the tent, suggesting that the 3-year-old had left the campsite barefoot, something that seemed impossible given the rough terrain and cool night temperatures. Detective Santos also noted that the family's food supplies were completely intact, with no evidence that they had eaten breakfast or made any preparations for activities on Saturday morning. The camping stove was cold and unused, and the coffee that Mark had planned to make first thing in the morning remained in its packaging. Everything suggested that the family had disappeared sometime during the night, rather than early in the morning. The search for the Thompson family expanded throughout Saturday afternoon and into Sunday, with over 100 volunteers joining professional search and rescue teams to cover the vast wilderness area of Whitewater State Park. Helicopters equipped with thermal imaging cameras flew grid patterns over the forest, while ground teams followed every trail, examined every clearing, and searched every structure within a 10-mile radius of Campsite 17. The search efforts included specialized teams trained in different types of wilderness rescue scenarios. Water rescue specialists examined every creek, pond, and wetland area in the park, while technical rescue teams investigated caves, ravines, and other terrain features where a family might have fallen or become trapped. Despite these extensive efforts, no trace of the Thompson family was found during the first critical hours, when they would most likely have been discovered if they had simply become lost in the forest. Detective Santos interviewed the Martinez couple extensively about their discovery of the abandoned campsite, but their account provided no additional clues about what might have happened to the Thompson family. Robert and Linda Martinez were experienced campers who were familiar with wilderness safety and emergency procedures, and they were certain that they had not disturbed the campsite or overlooked any evidence before contacting authorities. The investigation expanded to include interviews with other campers and park visitors who had been in Whitewater State Park during the night of August 12th and the morning of August 13th. These interviews revealed that several people had heard unusual sounds during the night, though none could provide specific details that might explain the family's disappearance. Tom Bradley, a camper at a site approximately 2 miles from Campsite 17, reported hearing what sounded like a vehicle engine running somewhere in the forest during the early morning hours of August 13th. This was unusual because vehicle access was prohibited in the primitive camping areas of the park, and Bradley had assumed he was hearing maintenance equipment being used by park personnel. However, park records showed no maintenance activities scheduled for that area during the weekend. Another camper, Jennifer Walsh, reported hearing voices and what might have been a child crying sometime between 2 and 3 a.m. on August 13th. Walsh had been awakened by the sounds and had listened carefully, but the voices had stopped after a few minutes and she had assumed they came from other campers dealing with typical nighttime camping challenges. In retrospect, Walsh worried that she might have heard the Thompson family during whatever crisis had led to their disappearance. Detective Santos also investigated the possibility that the Thompson family might have encountered wildlife that posed a threat to their safety. Minnesota's forests were home to black bears, wolves, and other potentially dangerous animals that might attack humans under certain circumstances. However, wildlife experts consulted during the investigation noted that attacks resulting in the complete disappearance of an entire family were virtually unknown, and there was no evidence of animal activity around Campsite 17. The investigation revealed that Mark Thompson had been an experienced outdoorsman who understood wilderness safety and would have been unlikely to make decisions that put his family at risk. His camping gear was high quality and properly maintained, suggesting that he took outdoor activities seriously and prepared carefully for potential challenges. Rachel was less experienced, but was described by friends as cautious and safety-conscious, particularly when it came to protecting Emma from potential dangers. As days passed without any discoveries, the investigation began to focus on the possibility that the Thompson family had been victims of foul play rather than a wilderness accident or getting lost in the forest. Detective Santos worked with behavioral analysts to develop theories about what might have motivated someone to abduct an entire family from a remote campsite in a state park. The theories ranged from random crime committed by someone who was in the area illegally to targeted abduction by someone who had been following the Thompson family or who had learned about their camping plans in advance. The remote location of Campsite 17 would have provided an ideal setting for a crime, as the nearest help was miles away and the thick forest would have muffled any sounds of struggle or calls for help. Detective Santos investigated the Thompson family's personal and professional relationships to identify anyone who might have had a motive for harming them. This investigation revealed no enemies, conflicts, or recent problems that might explain their disappearance. Mark and Rachel were described by friends and family as a loving couple who were devoted to their daughter and who lived quiet, law-abiding lives in their suburban community. The couple's financial situation was stable, with no debts or business problems that might have motivated criminal activity. Mark's accounting practice was successful and growing, while Rachel enjoyed her teaching position and was planning to return to work when the new school year began in a few weeks. There was no evidence of marital problems, substance abuse, or any other issues that might have led to voluntary disappearance or risky behavior. As weeks turned to months, the investigation into the Thompson family's disappearance continued, but with diminishing hope of finding them alive. The case attracted national media attention, with television programs featuring their story and generating thousands of tips from across the country. However, none of the tips led to credible sightings or useful evidence about what had happened at Campsite 17. The Thompson family's relatives established a reward fund and worked tirelessly to keep the case in the public eye. Mark's parents, Robert and Helen Thompson, moved to Minnesota to be closer to the investigation and to coordinate with law enforcement. Rachel's sister, Jennifer Walsh, took extended leave from her job to help with search efforts and media coordination. The first anniversary of the disappearance brought renewed attention to the case, but also the painful realization that the Thompson family was unlikely to be found alive after such an extended period. Nonetheless, search efforts continued, with volunteers organizing periodic sweeps of remote areas and investigators following up on any new information that emerged. Detective Santos retired from the Minnesota State Police in 2019, but she continued working on the Thompson case as a consultant. She had developed a personal connection to the family and felt responsible for finding answers about their fate. The case had become the most challenging and frustrating investigation of her career, representing a mystery that seemed to have no logical solution. The breakthrough in the case came in June 2023, nearly 7 years after the Thompson family's disappearance. A severe storm system moved through northern Minnesota, bringing heavy rains and strong winds that caused significant flooding in the Whitewater State Park area. When park personnel began assessing storm damage and clearing debris from trails and waterways, they made a discovery that would finally provide answers about the fate of Mark, Rachel, and Emma Thompson. Park maintenance worker David Kim was using heavy equipment to remove fallen trees and debris from a remote ravine approximately 3 miles from Campsite 17 when he uncovered what appeared to be the remains of a vehicle that had been hidden beneath years of accumulated vegetation and forest debris. The vehicle was a blue Ford Explorer that matched the description of the Thompson family's car, though it was located in an area that should have been inaccessible to vehicles. The discovery was immediately reported to law enforcement, and Detective Lisa Rodriguez, who had taken over responsibility for cold cases, arrived at the scene within hours. Rodriguez contacted Detective Santos, who came out of retirement to assist with the investigation of what might finally be the resolution of the case that had consumed years of her career. The Ford Explorer was carefully excavated and examined by forensic specialists who confirmed that it was indeed the Thompson family's vehicle. Inside the car, investigators discovered human remains that DNA analysis would later confirm belonged to Mark, Rachel, and Emma Thompson. The condition of the remains made it difficult to determine the exact cause of death, but their discovery finally answered the question of what had happened to the family. The location where the Explorer was found provided important clues about the circumstances of the Thompson family's disappearance. The ravine was accessible via an old logging road that had been closed to public use for many years, but could still be navigated by someone with knowledge of the area and appropriate equipment. The positioning of the vehicle suggested that it had been driven into the ravine deliberately rather than accidentally. Forensic examination of the Ford Explorer revealed evidence that was consistent with the family having been murdered at another location before being placed in the vehicle and disposed of in the remote ravine. The careful concealment of the car suggested that the crime had been planned and executed by someone who was familiar with the area and who had taken steps to ensure that the evidence would not be discovered. Detective Rodriguez reopened the active investigation into what was now confirmed as a triple homicide. The evidence from the vehicle was analyzed using forensic techniques that had not been available in 2016, including advanced DNA analysis that might identify the perpetrator even after 7 years. The DNA analysis revealed genetic material from an unknown individual on several surfaces within the Ford Explorer. This evidence was entered into national databases and compared against samples from other crime scenes and known offenders. The search revealed potential connections to several unsolved cases involving missing persons in wilderness areas throughout Minnesota and neighboring states. The investigation focused on identifying individuals who would have had detailed knowledge of Whitewater State Park and access to the closed logging roads that led to the ravine where the Thompson family's vehicle was discovered. This led investigators to examine current and former park employees, as well as individuals who had worked in logging or other industries that operated in the area. One name that emerged during this investigation was particularly significant: Carl Morrison, a former park maintenance worker who had been employed at Whitewater State Park from 2014 to 2017. Morrison had been terminated from his position in early 2017 following complaints about inappropriate behavior toward female park visitors, though no criminal charges had been filed at the time. Further investigation into Carl Morrison revealed a troubling pattern of behavior that had not been fully recognized by park authorities. Several female campers had reported uncomfortable encounters with Morrison, describing him as someone who seemed to watch them from a distance and who found excuses to visit their campsites under the pretense of performing maintenance duties. Detective Rodriguez's investigation revealed that Morrison had intimate knowledge of all the old logging roads in the park, including the route that led to the ravine where the Thompson family's vehicle was found. Morrison had also been on duty during the weekend of August 12 to 13, 2016, and would have known about the family's presence at Campsite 17. When investigators attempted to locate Morrison for questioning, they discovered that he had left Minnesota shortly after being terminated from his park position and had since died in a vehicle accident in Montana in 2019. However, DNA samples obtained from Morrison's former residence revealed a match to the genetic evidence found in the Thompson family's Ford Explorer. The investigation revealed that Morrison had apparently approached the Thompson family's campsite during the night of August 12th, possibly claiming to be conducting security checks or responding to a reported problem. Once he had gained access to the family, he had forced them to accompany him to his vehicle and had transported them to a secondary location where he killed them before disposing of their bodies and their car in the remote ravine. The resolution of the Thompson family case provided closure for their relatives, though it also brought the painful knowledge that Mark, Rachel, and Emma had been murdered by someone who was supposed to protect park visitors. The family's relatives found some comfort in finally knowing what had happened, but they also struggled with anger about the failure of park authorities to recognize the threat that Morrison had posed. The discovery led to significant changes in how state parks screen and monitor their employees, particularly those who have contact with campers and other park visitors. Background checks were enhanced, training programs were improved, and supervision protocols were strengthened to prevent similar tragedies from occurring in the future. The Thompson family case also contributed to advances in cold case investigation techniques, particularly regarding the use of DNA evidence and environmental factors in solving crimes that had remained unsolved for years. The storm damage that revealed their vehicle demonstrated how natural events could uncover evidence that had been successfully hidden for extended periods. Whitewater State Park continues to operate as a popular destination for camping and outdoor recreation, but the Thompson family tragedy serves as a reminder of the importance of vigilance and safety in wilderness areas. Campsite 17 has been permanently closed and converted to a memorial area where visitors can reflect on the family's story and the importance of protecting those who seek peace and recreation in natural settings. The case of Mark, Rachel, and Emma Thompson remains one of Minnesota's most tragic examples of how predators can exploit the trust and vulnerability of families seeking to enjoy outdoor experiences together. Their story continues to be studied by law enforcement professionals and used in training programs for park personnel who have responsibility for protecting visitors in wilderness areas. The blue Ford Explorer that should have carried the Thompson family safely home from their camping adventure instead became their tomb in a remote ravine, hidden for 7 years until nature itself revealed the truth about their fate. Their story serves as both a tragedy and a reminder of the importance of thorough background investigations for anyone entrusted with the safety of families and children in vulnerable settings.